Change, change, change. The world is run on change. I remember this defining moment in my life when I was in a field working like I had done every single day of my life. And there were 8 oxen in front of me. I had a wealthy family, and we were working the field, and I myself was pulling the last plow. And I was working and I was sweaty, but I saw this man come off in the distance. He was a little older. He was about 20, 30 feet away at this moment, and I stopped working. I stopped dead in my tracks because I was like, why is this man on my field? And why is he approaching me? He wasn't in a hurry, so there was nothing was the matter, I guess, but he was walking with purpose. And I saw him, and he comes really close to me, but he doesn't say anything. All he does is takes his coat, his mantle, his cloak, and he throws it over my shoulder. You see, in the time we were in, this meant something so big, something so important. He almost wanted to make me his disciple. He wanted to take me under his wing and teach me and show me his ways. But I didn't even know who he was. But I felt something different in that moment. Something changed in the air. And I knew that although the life I lived, it was good, and I was comfortable, and we were a wealthy farm family. But the life he was calling me was the life I was meant to lead. And I knew what I needed to do. But I asked him, I was like, can I see my family one last time? And he said, sure, do what you want. So I did. So I went back and I slaughtered the oxen. I took the plow and I broke it and I burned it and I cooked the oxen on it. And then from there, I fed it to my people and my family, and we shared one last moment. And I looked back at the familiarity, and I left and followed this man, Elijah. And it was crazy. Throughout these next couple of years, Elijah taught me many things. He taught me how to hear God's voice. He taught me how to use God's power. He taught me how to get out of hard situations by prayer. And it was amazing. And through Elijah, I saw many miracles happen. It was crazy. I saw him feed people like he shouldn't have been able to do. I heard him hear and prophesy like he shouldn't have been able to do. But the Lord moved in him, and the Lord used him in ways I didn't think possible. But these servants and these prophets started coming up to me. They started saying, your master, he's leaving soon. And I said, oh yeah, sure, I know. And it kept on happening time and time again. They said, your master is leaving soon. And I said, I know, when I acted all confident. I was like, I know these things. But in my head, I was like, my master's leaving? Elijah, the man who taught me everything, is leaving? The person who literally taught me how to hear God's voice is leaving. Is that just going to leave me alone? Has anyone ever had somebody in their life leave them, and it just makes you feel so alone? And finally this situation happens, right? We cross the Jordan and we get to this field, and I'm talking with Elijah in an attempt to grab anything else I can grab from him, because I know the time's nearing. In an attempt to get any other knowledge, I ask him, Elijah, can I have a double portion? Can I have a double anointing of what you had? And he said yes, and he gave it to me willingly. But almost immediately after, I feel this whirlwind and this rush past me, and this flame go past me, and I see Elijah taken up in this chariot of fire, or maybe the chariot was fire. It was so confusing, but just like that, he was gone. Just like that, he was gone. And years of my life spent with this man, I was now alone. And I remember the grass on my feet. I remember the wind touching my face. I remember everything about that area. I could hear the Jordan River in the background. But what I couldn't remember was the smell of burning. I couldn't remember the heat of the flame. And it was like every memory of Elijah was so distant from me. It's like he wasn't even there anymore. And fear started creeping in, and I heard a voice say to me, you are alone. You are nothing with Elijah. Maybe he did cool things through you, but now that he's gone, Can you do them anymore? Could you even hear God's voice? And this fear, it was like paralyzing me, and I didn't know what to do. But I heard this thud. I heard this thud, and it was Elijah's cloak. It had hit the floor. And in that moment, God spoke to me, and He said, pick up that robe. Pick up that cloak. And I did. I went right up and picked up that cloak, and I know what I needed to do in that moment. I knew that I had to take this, and I used it, and I slapped the face of the Jordan, and it split. And there were people who noticed it, right? There were other prophets who noticed this feat, and it was God moving through me. And it was in that moment where I felt like it was going to be okay. It was that moment where I was like, you know what? Everything's going to be all good because God is still working through me. And I was used by God in these next 20, 30 years to do many miracles. I fed 100 people off of only 20 loaves of bread. I prophesied to kings and kingdoms. Things that I knew in my knowledge I couldn't do, but God spoke through me. All these amazing feats. Yet that fear was still there. And I remember a specific moment that shook me to the core. There was one woman who came to me and said, Elijah prophesied that I would have a son, even though I was at old age. Even though I was old. And it happened. Except for now that son is dead and lying in a bed. And I was shook to the core. I didn't know what to do. It was like riding a camel bareback. Let me tell you, I was so dumbfounded, and I didn't know what to do, and I felt this fear hit me because I didn't know what this woman wanted me to do. Did she want me to go back in time? God had used me to deal with stuff in the present, right? God had used me to even prophesy and speak about stuff in the future. But this woman, it was almost like she wanted me to go back in time. Or maybe she wanted me to raise the dead. Both things I think I can't do. And this voice comes to me again and says, Elisha, you're nothing without Elijah behind you. You're nothing without this master behind you. Sure, you may have done all these miracles, but finally there's something that's just too much for you, and now you're going to be alone. They're going to hold you accountable to his death. They're going to blame you for this mistake. And it started creeping in. This fear started creeping in, and I felt alone, and I didn't know what to do. But as I walked in the room, I saw the boy. And he still looked warm. I could still see the color in his face. And I felt God speak to me and say, Elisha, this boy can be brought to life if you would just listen. And he told me to outstretch my body 3 times over him. And it seemed weird. I didn't even bother explaining to the mother, because it would just seem strange, right? I'm a grown man just gonna lay on top of her dead son. I don't even know if you should laugh at that. It's weird. But this is the moment I was in. And I didn't know what to do. But I said, Lord, I'm going to say yes, even though I don't understand. And I outstretched over him once. Nothing changed. And I went back over him again, and I outstretched twice, and nothing changed. And I went and outstretched over him 3 times in the span of about 30 seconds, and I was confused. I didn't know what I was doing. I was fearful, and the situation was creeping up on me. But by that 3rd time, let me tell you, that boy was up so quick. He was up so quick, and before I knew it, he was hugging his mother. And I almost forgot seeing him dead, because he was up so quick. And the warmth in him restored, and they both hugged me. And every time since then, I would go back in that town, and they would welcome me with warm arms. They would hug me. They would let me stay there. And it was crazy that the Lord would use me to do something so crazy. But throughout the rest of my life, I would still hear that small voice saying, you're alone. And after every miracle I would do, I would hear him say, but you won't do it again because you don't have the power. And this fear stayed with me, and it would paralyze me in moments. At the later years of my life, I became sick and ill. And I remember just countless days of pain, countless days of being sick. And I didn't know why I was here. And then that voice would keep saying, you are alone. your fear is going to keep you. And I know you're wondering, Elisha, why are you rambling here? It's because I've been in your shoes before. And I've heard these stories be talked about me. They always talk about this moment. They always talk about this one point in time where everything changed. Either they talk about the moment where I was converted and Elijah came and put his mantle on me, and there was like, that was the point things changed. Or they'll talk about the moment when Elijah left me and this double portion, this double anointing was on me, and that was when everything changed. But it wasn't like that. Fear was there at every moment. I was paralyzed at every moment. My situations would bear down on me almost to the point where I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. There were moments where it was so hard to hear God's voice. In every situation. And when Elijah left, I felt so alone. But every moment, even when I would hear the enemy, even when I hear the adversary, I would hear God's voice come in. His still, small voice. It would come in like a wave crushing over me with a peace that would transcend my understanding, that would transcend my situation, that would transcend my fear, and it would even overshadow the enemy's voice. This voice would speak to me so clearly and calmly and would explain to me what I needed to do. It would remind me of my purpose, remind me of my call. So as I sit here and I look at the leaders, the next prophets, the next pastors, the next people who may be following in my footsteps, let me assure you, there isn't one moment where fear gets easier. There isn't one moment where the temptation stops. There isn't one moment where the enemy's voice ceases to exist. This was active in my life. Through every miracle, through every moment God worked through me. But you know what? Every time I said yes, it was easier the second time. Every time I said yes to God and no to my fear, every time I said yes to ignoring my situation and hearing God's voice, it got easier. And just like when I was called with the mantle thrown on my shoulder, just like when Elijah went up, just like when the Jordan was split, and just like when I resurrected that boy with God's power, fear was always there, but I just said yes to God. So when the going gets tough, when you feel like people aren't hearing what you're saying, when you feel like you might not be able to hear from God anymore, when you lose someone close to you, that fear may still be there. That worry and that even that feeling of isolation may still be there. But if you would just be still and hear God's voice and that peace, He will work through you. One step at a time. One yes at a time. Thank you.